Dayne, it's been a rollercoaster 6 months for you. How are you feeling right now, the fact you're back at Collingwood?
Yeah, well, it's obviously the second time that I've been through this process now, so I can tell you that it doesn't get any easier. From about 3 o'clock this afternoon, I was, the palms were getting sweaty, the feet were getting sweaty, so I was getting a little bit anxious about the whole situation. But luckily enough, I've got a very good management group, and two clubs that were willing to do a deal, which is fantastic for myself and my family.
Dayne, people around you and the ones that are closest to you know your story, but the public doesn't, and there's Brisbane Lions people who have an opinion of you tonight. Can you, if you're able to and if you're up to it, just explain to everyone in footy and anyone who's interested as to where you're at right now and why you have made this decision today?
Yeah, well, obviously the passing of my father was well documented throughout the year, and the struggles that I had, with some mental illness issues and some grief. And to be honest, I'm still working through those issues. By no means have they gone away. And I guess I went to the footy club just before the season had finished, and we had a really mature conversation, myself, Greg Swan and David Noble, about the possibility of maybe returning to Victoria. I let them know, and I was as honest as I could be with them. I let them know that in 2 years' time that I wouldn't sign another contract with Brisbane, and I'd be coming back to Melbourne, basically so that they could, get the best possible outcome for their footy club, because I love the Brisbane Lions footy club. I love everything they've done for me, and I wanted this to work for both parties. So, my preference was to get back to Melbourne as soon as possible. At that stage, the club was sort of a little bit against it, and they see me as part of their plans moving forward for at least the next 12 months anyway, knowing that I still had 24 months to run on my contract. And my wife and I discussed the possibility that I'd still be in Brisbane for at least 12 months, and then we'd maybe revisit it after the 2019 season. But I guess after the best and fairest, and once this trade period opened up, I guess discussions between both clubs started to happen, and then I was made aware of those, and I guess the possibility of me returning back to Victoria. And at the time I was already in Victoria, so it felt right. To be honest, it's probably one of the only things this year that's made sense to me, and I've been really clear in my head about that being back in Victoria is where I need to be right now. I make decisions based on that I'm a father and a husband. I don't make decisions from a football point of view. I do what's best for my family, and at the moment, with the stuff that I am still going through, it was best for me to get back to Victoria and be around my family. I've got all dad's side of the families in Melbourne. Obviously my partner Kelly, all her family are here. I've got basically a second family that sort of took me in when I first came to Collingwood, that are here in the Bounces, and who work. Rowan works at Collingwood, so I've got a lot of support here. There's a bit of a misconception that I've got my family is in Victoria. I've also got my sister in Melbourne as well. So I've only really got my mother and my brother, who's now moving on to the next chapter in his life. So I just felt like that the best thing for myself and my family, as I said, was to get back to Victoria. And I'm grateful that both clubs were able to come to an agreement, and I've landed back at Collingwood, because post my father's death, I always used to say to my dad that I'd end up finishing my career at Collingwood. My heart's always been at the Pies, but 4 years ago, the circumstances were that I needed to get back to Brisbane to be with my dad, and I can't thank both clubs enough for allowing me that opportunity, because the last 4 years have been besides the last 12 months in dealing with his death, they've been the best years of my life, being able to spend the last few years with Dad.